It's Monday, June 21st, 2021. It's about 2:35, and we're meeting. I'm at the Board of Elections, and the rest of you are attending virtually. Everybody's here. We have a quorum. And what I'd like to say is, as you all know, the governor has lifted all the mandatory restrictions, mask restrictions. The county has loosened up too, so next meeting we should all meet in person. Back to the board. Certainly if someone has concerns, health concerns or other issues, they can always participate virtually. But I'd like to get everybody back in person and get back to our pre-pandemic way of life. So we'll do that in the July meeting, which is when? July 19th. We'll all be back here. Okay?
Jim, just to clarify that, we're all back there, but if any member or member of the public wants to participate virtually, they can.
That's the way, it's always been like that. Yes. Yep.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay.
I have to mute Elise. There's a lot of background, so I'm muting Elise.
Yep.
But please unmute yourself, Elise, when you would like to address.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I have no additions or changes to the agenda. Okay. Disclosure of campaign contributions. Does any member have any campaign contributions that are called for by our bylaws to disclose? Hearing none, there are no disclosure of campaign contributions. Lisa, do we have any public comments?
No one has contacted me in advance to address the board.
Okay. Is there anybody online or participating that would like to address the board? Okay. Hearing none. I'm sorry?
Humberto is. I'm muting Humberto.
Who's that?
That was Humberto.
Oh.
I'm muting him.
Okay. Okay, so we have no public comments. Margaret, your status report?
Okay, on the action items, the webpage was updated with the vote by mail and election calendar. The letter for the Maryland Association of County Officials was distributed by Ms. McLaughlin. The Comar updates were sent to the board members by Mr. Karpinski. And the biennial agenda is still pending for distribution by the State Board of Elections. And so those were the action items. The monthly statistics were posted on June 2nd, not June 1st. Our member of staff was in jury duty on the 1st, so that was the delay. Budget for the Board of Elections was approved by the County Council on May 27th. There was no surprises there. It was exactly what was projected. And the U.S. Postal Service has announced a rate increase, and stamped mail could go to as high as 58 cents, and with automation it would go up to 42.6%, 42.6 cents. This will impact our budget if this increase is adopted. In terms of personnel, we have released all of our temporary IT staff after they completed the post-election maintenance and the state inventory on June 4th. We are continuing to work with Human Resources. We are continuing to work with Human Resources to fill vacant positions. And we did have a discussion with our county liaison regarding concerns about filling our permanent vacancies. And we will be following up with the Office of Management and Budget with regards to that. The budget, Kara, do you have any questions for Kara with regards to our current budget? Hearing no questions, voter registration. Are there any questions regarding the monthly statistics? Hearing no questions, going on to the State Board of Elections. The State Board informed the election directors that the proposed upgrade to the voting system will not occur, and I have provided in the election director's report the statement that was released to the directors relating to this matter. There was a follow-up question by Alan who sent that out to me, and Janet Ross is going to follow up and give you what information she has been able to find out. Calls have been made into the state board. Janet?
The EVS 6110 is just a software number. And Alan, I didn't know if you wanted to know what the EVS meant or what was included in the upgrade. So I was confused as to what you were looking for.
What's included in the upgrade, Janet?
The only thing I know for sure, it was going to load images, and they were going to change the BMD to show the candidates in 2 columns. Other than that, the state gave us no more information. We were not allowed to look at any testing that they did. They prohibited us from seeing anything. And the only issue that we were notified of was the RCN with the loading of the images. It impacted the timing, so that was the only issue that was mentioned last Thursday when they told us they weren't going to do it. They gave us no further information. I've put calls into the state to see what additional information I can find out, but nobody has gotten back to me.
Yeah, thanks for trying, because I was concerned that this could be a glitch in the next election.
It's the same, right now, the voting system is the same system that we currently use. There are, we will be conducting a mock election this fall with the network hardware refresh that is being implemented. Do you want to talk about that? Okay. So
Excuse me, before you get to the mock election, I apologize. I was knocked off of the call and had to come back. But am I understanding that they are yet again postponing the fix to the BMDs concerning the page navigation?
Yes.
That seems like kind of a long-standing concern to our board. I think that I believe that Marianne and Jackie brought it up like for 2016, perhaps. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that we can do to try and I don't know, is the decision that they made a final decision? It just seems like if they're not going to be making that update, we're going to have a number of issues caused, especially with the number of ballot styles that we are going to have.
David, Janet and I are pursuing Alan's request to get further information. We certainly can add the question, is this a final decision by the state board, as well as they are required to work with DoIT, which is the state IT department. So that's the best we can do for you right now.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think it would be really useful for all of us to hear as soon as you know where things stand, because that's just seems like such a long-standing issue of interest to us, and given the burden of the large number of paper ballots, I would think that anything we can do to make the ballot marking devices more user-friendly, I think would very much be in all of our interests. So thank you.
Okay. The state did announce, though, that they will refresh the network hardware, and testing will be conducted as part of our mock election in the fall of 2021. Montgomery County staff served on the focus group in the development of the new vote-by-mail application, and the portion of the local board of elections input has been completed, and now it is with the University of Maryland group in terms of doing further testing with the public. Additionally, ES&S and SBE will be examining and investigating the ballot marking devices that allegedly had flipping occurring. The equipment review will occur with state board staff and ES&S technicians. The equipment, excuse me, the equipment is here, and they will be coming here. The IT staff is working with SBE staff related to the GIS mapping in preparation for redistricting. This includes the software updates due to the changes to the county GIS data format, and the staff is proofing the data to make sure that the street file is accurate. And SBE is working on these redistricting issues as it impacts the election calendar. So when I say that, I mean that they are talking to the legislators and the governor's commission on redistricting and stressing the importance of, certain legal deadlines and how it would be very, very helpful to have certain pieces of the redistricting accomplished at the front end of the legislative session as opposed to the back end. So, and aside from that, I really am not party to any of the discussions that the state board is having with any of the legislators or the governor's commission. But they are talking, so that's very important to know. The ballot drop box requirements are in the very, very earliest portion of development, and the state board has not offered any guidance to the local boards of elections as to what they will be proceeding with in terms of decisions of equipment allocation, etc. I don't expect, based on comments that were made at this local Board of Election Directors meeting, that we will hear anything until probably later this summer. And then the poll book acquisition right now is planned to go before the September Board of Public Works meeting. And so Allison did send you a letter for Mako from the board. If you wish, we could discuss that now, or we could go to the end of the meeting. Does the board have a preference?
Well, Allison, have you received any feedback from the board?
I think the biggest question that I have for the board, here, let me put my camera on here. I think the biggest question that I have for the board, because there was some discussion about sending a letter directly to the Board of Public Works, and the reason why the letter that you have in front of you is directed to Mako is because the Board of Public Works doesn't have a pot of money that they can identify. Somebody at the Department of Budget and Management would have to do the work of identifying the another funding source. If this question were to go to the Board of Public Works in regular order today as it stands, then all the Board of Public Works could do procedurally would be kick it back to DBM. And so what Mako is trying to do is to figure out how to work this process to identify alternate sources of funds before it gets to the Board of Public Works. But I understand that, there's value to board members in messaging directly to the Board of Public Works as well. So I guess my question to you is if you are good with this approach right now of kind of providing the Maryland Association of Counties with their documentation for them to see where we stand to do the sort of staff work on this, or if you as board members, want other recipients, want to do other letters as well, that's fine with us at a staff level. It's up to you.
Jim, may I speak to this?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the letter that was circulated, you know, hit the button in terms of what we want. I mean, I would prefer to go to Mayo first before the Board of Public Works.
Mako?
I mean, Mako. David?
I have a slightly different view. I think that we should be doing an and not an or, that we should be letting anyone who is in a position to influence this decision know our views. And I suspect that if members of the Board of Public Works, 2 of whom are from Montgomery County, were to hear from us and other large jurisdictions about the problem with our being told to pay 100% of the cost of something where we get 0% of the ability to influence what the cost is, what the item is, how it works, etc. I would think that would help provide extra incentive for both Mako and the state government and the State Board of Elections to work something out. My concern is that by the time we decide that it's time to reach out to the Board of Public Works, that the deal could be done. And I would also point out that Mako was supportive of legislation that Senator Kagan introduced in the last legislative session to call for 50-50 splits of election expenses, and that legislation did not pass. So my concern is that that we escalate our efforts, I guess, rather than continuing by going back to Mako only. I think it's really important for I think Mako has a lot of members whose interests are similar to ours. So I think it's a great idea to do that. But I'm concerned about limiting ourselves to that.
Are we on the same page with all the other, are we going to be out by ourselves, or do we have,
No, Mayo. Go.
do
Sorry.
we have support on this, or are we out there by ourselves?
I think this is a sort of a tactical question that you as the board members are deciding. As far as the position of wanting the poll books to be shared 50-50, the Mayo board did take a vote last week to send this letter. Sending it to Mako is the matter of trying to identify the source of funding before it goes to the Board of Public Works. But really, it's up to you as the board to decide who you want to address this letter to, if you want to send one letter or multiple letters.
Other counties are supporting the 50-50 split.
They are.
And they're using the vehicle of Mayo going to Mako.
I'm not aware of any other board at this moment that has penned and is preparing to send a letter. Others may follow your example.
Have we received feedback on the letter that you sent?
Not on the verbiage of it, no. I haven't received any edits.
Did everybody get that letter? Yeah.
Yes.
How does everybody feel
it
about
looked
that letter?
okay to me. Yes.
Any comments on that letter before we decide what else to do?
It's a good one.
Everybody okay with that letter?
I think it's good as far as it goes, but I guess I guess I have a question as to we say that we think it's inappropriate and unacceptable to shift the cost onto county government, which I agree. And we say that the legislature is considering kind of what the allocation should be. We don't really talk about some of the history of the 50-50 split, and we also don't talk about our lack of ability to be part of the decision. It's not just that we think that it shouldn't be a cost imposed on us. I think that part of our argument is that we don't. This is a decision that's being made at the moment unilaterally.
Jim, SC, I don't know who SC is, wanted to talk. SC raised his hand or her hand.
I don't know who it is. I don't know if now's the time or.
You said SC.
S. Campbell.
Somebody, I don't see anybody on the,
It's right here.
S. Campbell has his hand up.
Okay.
Thanks, Lou. S. Campbell. I don't, Mr. or Miss Campbell, are you on?
Mistake.
That was a mistake? Is that what I'm hearing?
I see a hand up next to a Mr.
Correct.
It's down
Okay.
now.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay.
Your question, Jim, do we have any problem what you wrote? I don't have a problem. It just says what we wanted.
Yeah, I mean, we can beef it up like David says. I mean, the more we put into it.
We can send it
I mean,
to
to
public.
me, this decision's already been made. But I think it's good to go on the record. I'm not so confident.
Why do you,
I'm not so
Jim,
confident.
why do you believe it's already been made? I get the sense from what Allison just said that at least others are thinking that we're relatively early in the process, given that they're going through MACO, et cetera.
That's just a feeling I have. But it can't hurt.
We can send it to public work and to MACO if you can.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would propose. I think, or at least I want to agree with you, Nahid. I think that we should send it to both, and we may want to copy it to some of our legislators who have either those who've been, well, it could go to all of them, but it's certainly the ones who have been working on election-related issues, and there's a number of them from our county who have been very much involved in that. I think that we would want them to do that, and I would think that that our county government has an interest in this as well.
Okay, then, Lisa, Alison, do you have the name of those legislators which are in the election committee or something? Do you know who they are?
Yeah, we can copy it to whomever you want. You want to copy it to the Montgomery County delegation or the committees of jurisdiction over elections?
How about both?
Sure.
Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, I have no problem with it. You know, the more we can express our
Sure.
opinion, the better.
And let's not leave out the council and the executive, although I'm sure that they are already kind of paying attention. But
All the council or just the president of the council?
well, I'm pretty sure if we send it to the president, it will get distributed to the others. But I don't see if we're sending it to the entire delegation, we could send it to the entire council.
Then we will need whole page to say CCCC.
That's right. We got the paper.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it may all be done electronically anyway. So
Do you want to do this as two separate letters, or you want me to just show copy to everybody on a single letter?
Well,
I think
David,
we
you
should
wanted
show
to add some
copy.
language. You want to get Allison some language you wanted to add?
sure, I'll be happy to suggest some language and copy everybody if you want it, or just send it to Allison, whatever you get, whatever you
Yeah,
prefer.
send what you want to add to it, and we'll all take a look. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay. No, I'm happy to do that. I do think though that our legislators, both and our county officials, should know that we're writing to the Board of Public Works, so that they also, because they have their own connections to the Board of Public Works, as do some board members, and so I think that it probably would be good for everyone to know what we're doing.
So,
Okay, got it.
that? Good.
Okay, thank you.
Margaret?
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
The webpage was updated with the vote by mail and the election calendar of 2022. And the staff is still in the process of reviewing the website and providing updates for the 2022 election. Board Attorney report?
Good afternoon. I have nothing new to report. Knock on wood, it's been relatively quiet.
Good
Okay.
news, Jim. Kevin.
Okay. Mr. President, you want to go on to new business?
Yeah, but you had an early voting as a new business?
Early voting, yes. What I am suggesting is I sent to you in the director's report a proposed schedule for the discussion of early voting, also to address some of these polling places that we absolutely must change, which was sent as attachment B, as well as originally I thought we were going to be able to talk about drop boxes, but the state board is not anywhere close to having any type of fruitful discussion with regards to that. But the staff is working on trying to identify those locations that meet the new the required legal security requirements. But overall, we are going to need funding for whether we have 13 or 14 early voting centers. So that would be 2 locations or maybe 3. And that's going to increase our budget along with the other elements of changes with the drop box, the precinct-based voting, the changes to the poll book or the upgrade to the new poll books, even the small changes that are being made to the network will require a server switch out. So we will have additional bills. And I anticipate that there will be a request by the county council, and they did identify that during the first hearing that they would be having the Board of Elections come to address them with regards to the upcoming election cycle, probably this summer. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up. The early voting law did change, and I identified in my document the changes that are different than they have been in the past, and that is, and we only have the law, we have not received any further guidance from the state board, but to accessibility of early voting center to historically disenfranchised communities, early voting propensity close to dense concentration of voters, accessibility to public transportation, equitable distribution throughout the county, and to maximize voter participation. The staff has been looking for early voting sites, and that was attachment A that was sent to you as a working draft. Staff is very interested in any recommendations that you have to make, keeping in mind that we need a location that meets all of these legal requirements in terms of transit. We need lots of parking. It has to be ADA. Security cameras are there. Ability to put campaign signs near major roads. Be able to shelter voters, for instance, when a tropical storm blows through. The executive office building does present a challenge to the staff now that we have precinct-based voting. We have devised a couple of different ways that if the board should choose to stay at the EOB with the 750 ballot styles, one way would be to only have ballot marking devices there, or to try to do something different with regards to the utilization of what's called a ballot on demand, which would mean that we would not have to store literally tens of thousands of ballots at that location, because the ability to keep the EOB secure is a little bit challenging because of the minimal amount of square footage. So if the board is going to hear more about the EOB as the staff is able to develop and gets more information as to develop their plans in response to whatever the board decides how it wants to proceed, and whether or not the board is going to give staff permission to ask the state board to allow us to use ballot marking devices only, or to explore the ballot on demand as a possibility. So today we are asking for the board members or any member of the public to offer other locations. Of course, these locations must be public so that the public is allowed there during early voting period, which is the 8 days prior to the primary in general, and we would need to be in there 3 days prior to the beginning of early voting to get the setup, as well as do testing, as well as making sure we have all of the parking and all of those requirements. Staff would need to get in there morning, probably between 5:30. The very first day, probably between 5 and 5:30. The rest of the days between 5:30 and 6. And we would probably be in each of the facilities between 9:30 to 11 p.m. at night. It needs to meet the new legal requirements. It's going to have a budget impact. Our proposal is that we would do a public information, public discussion. We would develop a booklet or an electronic booklet comparable to what we've done in the past that goes through each potential site and provides you all of the information visually so that you could look at it. On September 18th, we suggest a public hearing. We are recommending that you not have it at the EOB. Maybe it could be at the COB. And the reason I am suggesting that is that they are going to be replacing the HVAC system in the EOB, and there's going to be minimal air conditioning. So I do not think that that would be a great place to have a whole lot of people come in. So there's I would suggest a new location for that on September 21st. Again, continuing with the public input of any early voting site. Our recommendation is that the board make their decision on October 18th. Hopefully we know all the answers to the money. That would also allow the board attorney and operations to prepare all the MOUs that are needed to confirm for all of the sites, county and otherwise. And we would be able to hopefully submit to the state board sometime at the very beginning of November. The legal deadline is November 29th for the state local boards to submit. Then in July 19th meeting, we would have the early voting locations, budget ramifications, distribute any possible revised locations that the board would recommend. Staff suggests no meeting in August, because you do have a biennial meeting, but certainly that's your discretion. If you wish to have a board meeting August 16th, that's fine. As I said, the public hearing would be September 18th. Another reason we do not believe that you should have a public hearing on, the other date would be on a Saturday morning, is kind of what you've done in the past. That is 9/11. It's the 20th anniversary of that. And we suspect that because of the memorial that is on site at the EOB, that would be another reason not to have it that day. So again, COB here or another alternate site, staff is completely open to the board's direction. On September 20th, discussion of the early voting sites, continue to receive public input, and then begin the public input of the polling place changes, which was, I believe, attachment B. There are some polling places that absolutely must get moved because the school is going to be demolished and replaced, and some places that we can return to. We may begin to get hints of redistricting, so that might also give some information on polling place potential. I'm hoping that in October, the board will be able to recommend to SBE the early voting centers and the alternate locations for the 2022 election. Give us preliminary approval for the new polling place elections to allow the staff to prepare all of those regulatory paperwork documents. And I'm hopeful that the discussion of the drop boxes, we will have a number of how many drop boxes are going to be assigned to Montgomery County. if we need to supplement that, and to review the sites to make sure that they meet the security requirements. And then the November 15th meeting would be the backup meeting if the early voting center discussion cannot be finalized in October, and to begin the public discussion of the drop boxes, and the board, of course, the board's recommendation. Chris and her team are always interested in what the staff, or the board members are interested in. November 15th is also the deadline for the County Council Redistricting Commission to submit the council district lines to the County Council. So that will be the first of the redistricting steps. And then there will be the meeting on December 20th, which it will be determined. And it's our hope that the drop boxes, because of the procurement requirements for the state, that we will be able to finalize your drop box locations. And hopefully the county council will have actions related to redistricting, but their deadline is February 21st. Is that correct, Allison?
Yes, I'm looking. The council, if the council hasn't acted, then the commission plan becomes law on February 13th.
Of February 13th. So hopefully the council will have acted on that, and then the redistricting will need to occur where it impacts precinct lines. And for those of you who've never been involved in redistricting, it is a challenging process, not only for the staff, but it is also a challenging process for the board. And I just it's a complicated task with a lot of technical challenges, and the board's role is significant. Besides the movement, the board has to hold several meetings, or historically has held several meetings, to allow the public to weigh in on staff recommendations and how it might impact certain residential areas. The board has to review the description of the precinct boundary lines and compare it to the maps. And then each of you, and I think David was here, and maybe Jackie and a few others, you sign off on every precinct description, all 7 of you. So that is the calendar that staff is recommending for the board to address early voting, the precinct polling changes, the drop boxes, and to begin the budget process because you will need a supplemental budget. The $8.3 million that was allocated by the county council is a baseline. It does not address all of the additional legal requirements that were imposed in the last Maryland General Assembly.
Jim, may I say something?
Yeah, let me just, go ahead, Naeem.
Go ahead. Public transportation should not be the only option. Some area outside of the circle, people do not have a good public transportation. People have a car, and that shouldn't be a penalty for them not to have a early voting center in that area. We shouldn't just look at the public transportation. Sometimes, public transportation is not available, but that's not should be an issue to look for early voting center.
Yep, I know David had a
May I
question.
ask Kevin about that?
Let me just, Margaret, if
I know he said public, but that was 19th century. Now this is 21st century. I mean, people moved further down up, so to have a better education for their kids or whatever. I mean, we have to think about those people too, the working people which move outside of the public transportation area to give their family a good life. We have to think about them. I mean, I don't have any. If we have 20,000 early voting centers, fine, but We have limited space.
Well, so now what Margaret has included is just, I mean, there are 5 factors that the board is going to have to look at.
Yeah.
Not any one factor is dispositive, but there are 5 considerations that the board should be looking at in determining the 13 or 14 early voting centers. And so, you know, the spreadsheet that Margaret has given you is sort of a working draft. I think it's important that the board members look at all those 5 factors and look at the information that's been provided. You know, these are sites that, you know, quite frankly, most of them the board has reviewed before.
Yeah, I want to get to David. He had a question, but Margaret, in terms of what I think is a big cloud over everything is this redistricting. I personally believe that most, if not all, of the redistricting probably will end up in court. So if they don't meet the deadline, if they don't meet the deadlines of redistricting, we just go back to where we are and move ahead with candidates running in their old districts and everything staying where it is now.
That's what happened in 20.
Yes.
So if they don't meet their deadlines, we just go, candidates run where they ran in the past, and we're back to where we were. Is that my
Yes,
understanding correct?
That's the likely result.
Wouldn't that depend on what the judge says?
That's why I said that would be the likely result. Obviously,
Okay.
a judge would have to issue a stay, but if
this
it's still
cycle-
being on appeal and it's still being challenged, then it would be not unforeseen that a stay would be issued.
And everybody
So
would
it's
run,
resolved.
we'd move on like there was no districting for this cycle. Okay. Naheed, did you still have your hand up, or
No.
David, I think, anybody?
Okay.
Yeah, I had a comment and a few questions. First, a comment, which is that my understanding, you know, kind of in response to what Naheed was saying, is that we consider all of these criteria in making all of our decisions. And I understand that there definitely are places in the county that are not as accessible by public transportation as other places. Naheed, I'm sure you didn't mean to imply that people who ride public transportation are not working people. Many of them are working more than
I'm
one
not
job.
saying, no, I was talking about those which they don't have access to public transportation.
Right. No, and I
move up so that everybody have the same right, but
right.
I mean,
Right.
you have to look at the whole thing as a package.
We do have to look at the whole package, and you may recall that the board has, since I've been serving on the board, including when we were in the majority, has added early voting sites in Damascus, which is not necessarily the most publicly most accessible by public transportation.
That was one of my issues. That was one of my plays. I pushed for it because
yes.
they have the right.
Yes, and the board put it there. So anyway, okay. So I have a couple of questions. I guess the first one is the Board of Education construction that is in. I guess it was called Attachment B. And I mean, I'm glad to see that there are fewer than there were. I don't remember if it may have been 4 years ago that Jim, do you remember when it was that we went over and met with the school system? I thought it was
last term, not this term.
Yeah, right. But I don't think it was 2020. I think it was before, because 2020 was so unique.
Yeah.
And I guess I have a couple of questions. I guess the first one is, our board went on record a long time ago in favor of asking the legislature to change the date of here in the hopes that some of the construction could start after Election Day, and that did not happen in the last session of the legislature. And so I have a kind of a two-part question about that. The first is, if that were to happen on an emergency basis at the early part of the legislative session in 2022, would we be able to act upon it with the in the time frame that we would need to, and then and would it make a difference? As in, would the school system be willing, if the election were a week earlier, to start their construction after the after the Tuesday election, or do we know that?
Well, David, if the legislature were to move the election up a week earlier, hopefully they would put an emergency clause on it, as well as we would then notify the school system, as well as recreation and every other county facility, because we would have to redo almost everything in terms of the logistics and operational real estate needs to conduct the election. So is it possible? Yes, it's possible. And
do we
would have to just work with Seth Adams and Essie McGuire and make it happen.
Well, I guess part of my question, since my suspicion is that the legislature would not change the date unless they were pushed by people like us to do so. And I guess, and I know that there are a number of issues that we have with the election being at the end of June, including how it affects early voting and competing with camps, and there's a whole getting judges, and there's a whole slew of those issues. And I guess the question I'm asking is, can we find out, or perhaps Chris can find out, whether if the election were a week earlier, whether that would make a difference in terms of changing those polling places? Because if it wouldn't, that would give us a little bit less incentive. We still have some incentive, but it would give us a little bit less incentive to be pushing the point. Part of the reason why we were pushing the point, I believe when we were talking about it 4 years ago, it was like 60,000 voters that were moving. This is not insubstantial, but it's much less than that. Rather than waiting for the legislature to act and then seeing what the school system can do, I'm wondering if we can find out from the school system whether, if the legislature were to move the date, if that would change the availability of these facilities.
We can follow up.
David, I would just say that if the date was moved, that would be, in my view, and by the way, I was very much in agreement with you that when the letter was sent, that it was a good idea if the legislature would have done it this year, so we would have had some certainty. But keep in mind, we lock in these MOUs for early voting, and you go back to Gaithersburg or you go back to Sandy, Spring Volunteer Fire Department, and say, by the way, the MOU we signed, we need modified for access for 10 days, a week earlier. They may come back and say, sorry, we have other contractual obligations for those areas. So, I mean, it's kind of a domino effect if it's changed late in the game.
And so we may end up winning some and losing some. I mean, if we were to gain some spaces that later in the summer we have more issues with. But I hear what you're saying, that obviously it would have been way better to have had a decision in that came during the legislative session this year. But thank you for that. Now, do we have? The council has to act by February 13th on the redistricting, and the filing deadline is just like within 10 days after that. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct. Isn't the filing deadline the 25th, 22nd?
23rd, 22nd, something like that? Okay, and I don't know when is the time to have the discussion about the executive office building, but I thought that, I think somewhere in your in the documents that we received, I don't remember if it was in Margaret's report or in another document, there was a suggestion about using the EPBs, perhaps exclusively in that location. And until I heard that the state may not be fixing them for this election, I thought that sounded like a very intriguing idea. It's still intriguing. It's just not quite as good if we're going to have navigation issues. But that might be something to consider, because I mean that does remain not only the county seat of the county, but also our closest site to Metrorail. So. Anyway, I think that would be something that would be worth considering. And I think that's all. I guess I have another question about the drop boxes. Margaret, you said that you were hoping that we're going to get a number given to us so that we can then figure out. Where they go. Are we also going to have, are they all going to be the same? Are there going to be different sizes? Are there going to be any kind of options? And do you know whether there's going to be any purchasing of drop boxes going on, or are we only using ones that have already been purchased?
That is a lot of that discussion. It depends on how the state wishes to proceed. If the state says that the drop boxes that they utilize can only be placed in public locations, then the extra effort that we went to get those smaller drop boxes, then that's a budget question, and that would be something that we need to include in our budget request. So let's say you want to put a drop box at Gaithersburg Swim Club. I'm just making this up. Then, and for some reason that is not one of the 50 or 47 or however many they're allocating to us, then if we need to purchase additional drop boxes or a different type of drop box, then number one, we have to get an agreement from the board what it is specifically that you want, and then price it out, and then get the county to agree to amend our budget to include those purchases with the installation.
So do we own any of the drop boxes at this point?
We just own 3 small ones.
So like the one that was at Leisure World?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one you love, David.
Yes.
Okay. And then I believe my recollection of the board's reaction from last time is that we are less than thrilled with the idea of secured bags. And I'm wondering if we can make our plans be that we would rather have I would rather have the large drop boxes, and I know that I'm going to steal Alan's thunder that he'd like to have spouts so that people can do it from cars. But I mean, do we have any ability to influence what kinds of drop boxes are going to be available?
No, not the state, as I understand it, does not plan on purchasing any additional drop boxes at this time. They are just going to reutilize the drop boxes that they already currently have. So I believe the state has 300 of them, and they will be distributed across the state. So no, they will not be drive-up units like
Okay,
the one in front of
but
our
they'll be the large
building or
ones.
the one at Rockville.
I think, this is Alice Soon, I think part of the reason that Margaret is suggesting that we defer on the selection of the Dropbox location is just because there's so many unknowns here. We don't know whether the state is going to tell us that we get a certain number of drop boxes. We don't know if this is going to be a negotiation. We don't know. I know there was some discussion of potentially putting one of the larger drop boxes at Leisure World, but I know the state was not willing to authorize Montgomery County to put an early voting site in Leisure World at one point. Will the state allow their drop boxes to be used in locations that are not open to everyone in the county? We don't know that. Will the state maintain the line that they had last time, which was that all of their drop boxes needed to be basically walk-up boxes because of their accessibility requirement, and they didn't want somebody to have to go into the road to put their ballot into the box. And that was sort of their reason why they didn't use the spouts that we have available for the two that we had purchased, or the one we purchased and the one Rockville purchased. There's just kind of a list of unknown things here that it's difficult for us to proceed without having a little bit of a better handle on the state discussion. And I don't even know what the time frame is going to be for the state to take up regulations or guidance. So there's just a lot of unknown on that.
Okay, well, and understood. And I vaguely thought that the legislation specified the number or minimum number of drop boxes. I don't remember the specifics, but that might be a factor as well. Speaking for myself, I would say that the spouts, are a good idea, but not the be all and end all. I'm much more concerned about having the large drop boxes, and if the state is going to suggest that we can't put a large drop box in a private location that warrants because of its numbers, a large drop box, then I would think that we may want to communicate with the state, because I would think that we would want to size our drop boxes based on the number of the usage that we expect, not necessarily just if it's public or private. I would also just add, I appreciate that the staff is planning for a public hearing, which I know we've done in the past, and I think has been useful. And it sounds like you put a lot of thought into both when and where. And I definitely agree that a September meeting should not be held somewhere with with minimal air conditioning, because that's kind of a risk that we don't want to take. I do think that a Rockville location makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. So anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, I see Diane, Alan, and Elise. I see hands. I don't know who went up first, so.
Yes, I think I did.
Okay, Diane.
And I'll make it really quick. I just want to go on the record right now that I categorically oppose drop bags. And whatever we can do to see that we're not using bags to put ballots in will be one of my unwavering positions. So just want to throw that out. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. Alan?
Yeah, I had two questions. One is ownership of and payment for the drop boxes. If the state owns the drop boxes, did we pay for any part of that? Do we pay for any of the drop boxes?
I can't answer that question. We can look at, I can have Kara follow up.
Yeah, we don't want taxation without representation on this. The second question is, has anybody looked into the states that don't want drop boxes anymore to see if they have any available to us? That we could get them and change the logo on there. And Texas, Georgia, they want to get rid of their drop boxes. Can we get more from them?
I don't think so. They can sell it to you, 10,000 each.
Yeah, so a discount, yeah.
I can make that suggestion to the state.
That was a serious suggestion. That wasn't a joke. Thank you.
Margaret's going to take that to the state board?
Yeah, I'll take it to the staff.
Yeah, Elise.
To the state.
Elise?
Yeah, Margaret's going to raise that with the staff of the state board, Alan. Did you have something else, Al? I'm sorry.
No, I'm going to pull it down now.
Okay. Elise?
Yes, thank you. I just want to agree with David about having the public hearing in Rockville and the council auditorium or building would be, I think, great because it has a lot of seating and hopefully air conditioning. But the other thing was, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that David had made this point, and that Jim agreed with him that our primary focus would be on getting gymnasiums. And I see a lot of social halls, and I'm just wondering how we went to, what was the determining process in terms of how we ended up with quite a number of social halls as opposed to gyms, when I thought we had sort of had a discussion only for election day, but I do remember a discussion where gyms were going to be the preferred location.
This is Margaret. And, hi, this is Margaret.
It's just Elise. I just unmuted her.
Okay, this is Margaret. We have been meeting with the Department of Recreation with regards to the balancing act of summer camps with the needs of the Board of Election. I have requested that the Recreation Director attend the next meeting in July to discuss this matter with the board in terms of what the needs are for the Recreation Department, as well as the needs of the Board of Election and how we can coexist.
At our next meeting?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Margaret.
Okay.
Could I ask for some follow-up information related to that? Could we get, for the sites that we used in 2018 and 2020, in each instance, obviously we're going to want the turnout data, but also whether we were in a gym or a social hall?
Yes.
Because I think that when we're comparing what we're doing now to what we've done before, I think we need not just the building, but also the room we were in. And I would just say that in addition to balancing all the the needs of the rec department versus the needs of the Board of Elections, that we also need to look at the perception of voters in different parts of the county when some parts use gyms if other parts don't. And so I think part of why I was pushing for gyms for some time, and you may recall that at one point I pushed for the gym at Lawton. I pushed for gyms everywhere. I definitely and we as a board pushed for the gym in Wheaton. And when I say I pushed for the gym these other places, the board supported it. I mean, we were not. This was not something that was a dispute. I do think that there is a very big difference in both the perception of the voters and the experience of the voters if they're in a more crowded room than if there is more space, and that's true regardless of whether we're talking any part of the county. We have that as an issue as well. So if we can find out when we've used social halls and when we've used gyms in the past, and if there's again any way that we can work it out to use gyms where we can, but also to do it in a way that is equitable across the county, I think that will be to everyone's benefit.
I can provide information with regard to the 2018 primary and general election, but as you recall, we had no early voting in the 2020 primary, and we just had the 4 vote centers on election day. So there will be an absence of information with regards to that location, but we will provide you with as much information as we can as it relates to the siting of the early voting sites and what room we were located.
Okay, and if you could also provide us again the analysis of the wait times from 2018 on election day, because I think that's also a relevant piece of data for early voting.
And I
Since
agree
early-
with you, David, that that is a relevant piece of information, but you also need to recall that among the many changes that the legislature made is that we are mailing an application to vote by mail to every registered voter prior to the primary. And that's going to have a significant impact on the number of people that are voting. So I just want to just
Agreed.
add that as part
Yeah.
of the considerations of the board.
Oh, absolutely, Margaret, and I don't underestimate the difficulties both for you and us to try and predict what people are going to do in 2022 because of so many things that have happened since 2018. And I mean, it's going to be a complicated thing to figure out. I just think it's useful for us to have all the information that we can, and I do think that sending everybody a vote by mail application. I think it's hard to predict exactly how people are going to react because there may be people who really are longing to do things in person, and there may be people who think that they did it in 2020 by mail and they liked it. I mean, and I think it's going to be really hard to predict, but I appreciate getting all the information.
Okay, next.
I don't see any other hands. Okay. No, I think we got action items, Margaret.
Yeah, there'll be a considerable amount of data pulled together. The Recreation Department Director will be invited to attend the meeting in person.
Do you want me to go over the action items?
Yeah, would
Mr.
you
President?
please?
Okay, so the first thing I have is that staff will follow up with SBE to find out if the upgrades or the lack thereof is a final decision. I have that Ms. McLaughlin will send a letter regarding, well, the draft letter that she prepared that will go to MACO, Public Works, legislatures regarding those involved with elections, delegation, county executive, county council.
That's after the board has an
After it's been
opportunity
reviewed
to
with
provide
information
comments.
from Mr. Naaman and others. Then I also have that staff is going to follow up with public schools regarding legislation for moving election dates. And then I have the drop boxes, whether or not local boards or us specifically paid a part of the use of drop boxes. And then finally, I have the site. The board is requesting information from the 2018 primary and general election and 2020 turnout data and whether we were in a gym or a social hall, as well as analysis 20 wait times.
So Lisa, I just want to clarify. I want to be very specific with you all, and I'll have to get back to you if we paid for the actual boxes in the general. But I want you to be aware that we do pay for the transportation is a 50-50 split. So every time they are dropped off to each site from SBE where they are stored to the location, we do pay for the transportation, 50%. And when we purchased the first 4 boxes in the primary, those were paid for with CARES funds. Now, when we had the additional purchase of additional boxes, I am looking to make sure that we did not pay for those, but I am going to follow up and make sure that those boxes, if we paid for those. But the transportation of those boxes, Montgomery County pays for 50% of those costs. So there are costs associated with the boxes that we have paid for, but the actual boxes themselves, I'm going to contact SBE and find out if we paid for the box. Okay?
We need to contact them to know whether we paid for the box?
In the bill, we are charged costs associated with the box. So the transportation, so every time they are dropped off and picked up from the site, the early voting center, and the different locations they are at, we pay for that. So do you understand that there are costs associated with the box, and then
No,
there's the cost of the box?
I totally understand that there's costs associated with the box and the cost of the box. I guess what I'm not quite understanding is whether is the idea that we may not know if we pay, we're kind of trying to determine ownership of the boxes between them and us. And it just seems kind of odd that the way we're going to do that is by asking them.
Because I do not see a charge from this year. Every time I review the invoice, I see a ballot box delivery charge. And when I looked at every invoice last year, I saw a ballot box charge that was used and paid for with FEMA dollars. So for the first 3 quarters, or the first 3 quarters bill this year, the only charge that I see is from a ballot box delivery.
David, we need to follow up and determine if there were federal funds that were connected to the COVID relief monies that were utilized to pay for, if the governor utilized COVID funds to pay for these drop boxes. Would you?
Okay.
And so Kara needs to follow up on that, which is a separate cost from the transportation and personnel costs.
Right. But if the governor used federal funds to pay for them, what does that mean in terms of whether the boxes belong to us or the state? Because it sounds like, the federal government probably doesn't give money directly to the counties, or does it?
It does not.
It
It
does
gives
not.
it directly
It gave
to the
the money
states
to the
who belong
state.
to the state.
Okay, so the chances that we can prove at least that we paid for the boxes sounds like it relies upon the state telling us that we did.
I'm sorry, repeat your question? No. The chances are we did not pay for it because we do not have, it was not in our invoice. So I would look through our invoice to see every item that we paid for.
Right, I understand. Chances are they will at least be able to claim ownership, and we will not.
Chances are they provide us free boxes. They only charge us for transportation. That's it.
Well,
They charge us for 50% of the transportation.
except that they charge us for many things that we can't tell what they're charging us for in the overall bill.
Okay,
So
we're talking about the boxes. That's the issue with the boxes.
I understand.
They provided free boxes. We pay 50% of the transportation cost.
No. I heard what Kira said, Nahid, but money is fungible, and what I'm suggesting is that if we paid the state, as I understand it, we frequently pay the state large amount of charges. I don't know what they're labeled as, but they're not necessarily going to be labeled as being for boxes, but they're not necessarily going to be labeled as being for, I don't know how specific our charges are. When the state charges us for something, how specific do they charge us, or do they just say, here's your bill for election services for, X time period?
Well, you have seen a copy of our bill, and in defense of the state, when I've seen a charge from January that says delivery of carts to SBE warehouse, and I have questioned and I said, no, we paid for this. They have sent me an invoice and said, no, we did, and they have proved me wrong. So
Okay.
When I have questioned their charges, they said, no, that was our contractor, and they sent it back to me, an invoice from that contractor, and it's like, okay, that was, I think they use Able and we use JK Moving. And so they have been able to say this was our contractor, and they were correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
So,
Kira. Give it to him, Kira. Thanks.
The last action item on in my notes is Margaret is supposed to contact the state board staff to inquire about getting additional drop boxes from other jurisdictions.
Correct, thanks.
I see a hand up. Kira's got a hand up, but I think we're finished with Kira.
Yes.
Oh, Diane, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Diane.
Yes, thank you. That last discussion reminded me of something. David had mentioned that the monies were fungible, and Kira had mentioned that she didn't know if some of this was CARES dollars, FEMA money, paying for this. Can we get a itemization of what the CTCL, Center for Tech and Civic Life funds were used for. Can we add that to an action item, please?
Yes.
Got it.
Margaret said
Thanks.
yes, Diane. Okay. I think that's it with the action items. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to go to approval of minutes. There's 2 sets of minutes.
There are 2 sets of minutes, and we are finally caught up with all our
Yes.
minutes.
Good work.
First of all,
Good work.
Lisa, thank you so much. That's very difficult to do that, and you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naheed.
And it's a little bit the minute complicated. First, March 15. I move we accept the minute as Alan provide, and David made the correction that some of correction was already done by Alan. So therefore, I move we accept the March 15.
Thank you, Naheed. I just want to quickly say, I just want to confirm, these are the minutes that I received yesterday at 2 p.m.?
Right.
Those are the final ones,
right,
okay.
Right. Yes. yes.
I'm sorry. I want to make sure I understand as well. So the minutes we're talking about are the ones that that I sent
9 p.m. yesterday?
9 p.m. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, great.
I second.
So this is.
Oh.
Yeah, that's good. Go ahead.
Second,
Diane seconded.
Any further discussion? I would just say I've noticed that the minutes are starting to creep into longer than, they're getting longer and longer, I think, Lisa.
Nobody read it, Jim. Don't worry about
Keep
it.
commenting, they're getting long. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, March 15th is approved unanimously.
Okay. May 17, I move we accept the minute as amended by Alan. Mr.
Is there a second?
Second.
I had a very minor edit that I submitted to Alan's version, and I don't know if you are meaning to leave it out. It was a typo. That at least I believe it was a typo. If you want, I can pull up what it was.
As amended.
It's a typo, don't worry about it. No.
Well, it was, I deleted the
Can you pull it up,
word.
David?
I'm sorry?
Can you pull it up? Let's see what,
Yes, so on my version, it was the first full paragraph on page 4. There was a sentence that said, the estimated cost for poll books across the state is $31 million, and Montgomery County will be charged 17 or 18%. And then it said, which is an estimated at 5.25 million. And I proposed to delete the word "and," so it's which is estimated at 5.25 million.
Okay.
so it
I
was
modify
amended.
my-
Yeah, that's what you
Good.
have in front of you for signature.
Yeah,
I modify my
Lisa, that's-
move
that
to
was-
add what just David said. Yeah, hopefully we trust him.
I know that was a really controversial edit, and if you can't trust me on that one, then I think we have much bigger problems.
That is
Okay.
what Mr. Shalik has in front of him for signature.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr.
All
President, I
those in
move.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Second.
Aye.
Yeah, Diane seconded it. All those,
That was next.
Diane seconded.
all right, no one's opposed? Those are accepted unanimously? This son of a- Okay, that was good. So we're caught up.
You're caught up.
Lisa deserves applause for that. I'll tell you.
Really, I'm telling you. How many days did it take you this?
Nice.
The whole week?
Okay, so, as I said earlier, you know, obviously if someone is uncomfortable or not feeling well or has other pressing business, but other than that, we're all gonna get together in person, back to pre-COVID days, July 19th at 2:30. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adjournment say aye.
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 No one opposed? Stay safe and we'll see
Aye.
everybody July 19th.